Are you looking for a new escapade on board? Come and join our company, because here, we see and we got you. In Elberg, we bring together our experience, our commitment to quality and continual quest for improvement with the readiness to cope with the diversified demands and needs of our clients in accordance with regulatory requirements to deliver the best possible service. We value our seafarers as key workers and, as a company, we are committed to ensuring that the values we build are responsibly protected to provide satisfaction and to build lasting relationships with our clients. We are committed to integrity. We are proactive. We are innovative. We work with excellence. We value teamwork. We work with the utmost professionalism. In Elberg, we care about your welfare. We offer programs such as the Crew Welfare Program, Career Development Plan for Officers, Electrician Cadets, Fitter Cadets, and a Cadetship Program. What are you waiting for? Join now!
Welcome aboard. This is the Magna Carta of Filipino Seafarers, Chartering the Future. Marino World's webinar in celebration of the Day of the Seafarer. I am Lynn Bacani, your host. Is the Magna Carta of Filipino Seafarers still a priority bill for the Marcos administration? Why keep delaying its passage? The bill should have been signed by the President on February 26, 2024, and subsequently on June 13, 2024. Today, we are joined by government officials, seafarers, executives, and employees from local and international private institutions and non-governmental organizations. We have an overwhelming 169 registrants, and 70 of them are currently in the webinar room, while others watch us live on Marino World's official Facebook page. To give his opening remarks, our primary guest, the lead author of the Magna Carta of Filipino Seafarers, Kabayan Partylist Representative Congressman Ron Salo.
Isang mapagpalang araw po sa bawat po sa atin, sa lahat po ng mga kabayan po natin sa loob at labas ng Pilipinas. Ako pinagpapasalamat sa pagkakataon na binigay ng Marino World para makapag-present po ng salient provisions of the Magna Carta of Filipino Seafarers. Subalit bago po yon, hayaan po muna ninyo na magbigay-pugay po ako sa lahat po ng mga seafarers po natin ngayong araw na mga seafarers. Sa lahat po ng mga seafarers po natin na patuloy na nagsasakripisyo para itaguyod ang kapakanan ng kailang mga pamilya, ng kailang mga mahal sa buhay. Muli, nagpupugay po ang inyong pong lingkod, si Congressman Ron Salo sa inyo. Ngayon, bigyan po ninyo ako ang pagkakataon para ilahad itong salient provisions sa Magna Carta Filipino Seafarers na culmination po ito ng mahabang panahon ng pagtatasa. This particular Congress, inabot po tayo halos 2 taon na tasain yung mga iba't ibang provision po nito. And my outline of presentation will be as follows. First, we'll define the policy of the state. Second, will define or state the objectives of the law. Third, the coverage, the applicability of the law to domestic seafarers, the rights of seafarers, then the duties of seafarers, will mention also the non-discrimination of women clause in the particular law, proposed law, and roles of government actors in the maritime industry. Nandyan po yung government, nandyan po yung mga employers, yung education institutions, and the Philippine registered ships operating both domestically and internationally. So ano po yung deklarasyon po ng pulisiya po ng ating Estado? Under Section 2, sinasabi po dito, that the state shall protect the rights and overall welfare of Filipino seafarers, promote their full employment, and ensure equal opportunities in the maritime industry, regardless of sex or creed, including equitable access to education, training, and development, consistent with existing domestic and international laws, standards and conventions, particularly the Maritime Labor Convention of 2006 and the International Convention in Standards of Training, Certification, and Watchkeeping for Seafarers. The state shall endeavor also to secure decent working and living conditions for seafarers, standardize the terms and conditions of their employment, promote their skills and competencies, regulate operations of manning agencies, and incentivize maritime stakeholders, establish and enhance mechanisms for administrative, adjudicative, and social welfare services for the seafarers and their families. Malinaw po yung deklarasyon ng policy at ang nasa buod po nito ng Magna Carta of Filipino Seafarers, syempre ang nasa gitna are the seafarers. Why? Because it's all about them. Ito yung Magna Carta, it talks about the rights and welfare and the promotion of the welfare of our seafarers. And specifically, makikita po natin dito na it's a totality of creating a seafarer, a competent, qualified seafarer in order for him to be efficient and effective as a seafarer. Yun po yung nandito, nakabud po dito sa Magna Carta. So specifically, what are the objectives of the proposed measure? This Magna Carta of Filipino Seafarers under Section 3 states, first is to codify the rights and obligations of Filipino seafarers, both overseas and domestic, as contained the Maritime Labor Convention 2006 as amended, the International Convention and Standards of Training, Certification, and Watchkeeping for Seafarers, or the STCW Convention, pertinent conventions and international agreements to which the Philippines is a signatory and has fulfilled thereof. Second, it is to implement the MLC 2006 as amended and the STCW Convention for the Filipino seafarers, overseas seafarers, and identify the extent of their application to Filipino domestic seafarers. Third, it is to institute comprehensive measures that will enhance the education, cadetship, training, and practice of the Filipino seafarers to upgrade their qualifications and ensure their competency, competitiveness, and world-class quality. And aligned and institutionalize existing policies and rules of the Commission on Higher Education and the education of maritime students and training of cadets, of the Maritime Industry Authority in the qualifications and safety of both domestic and overseas seafarers, and the Department of Labor Employment on labor standards and protection of domestic seafarers, and of the Department of Migrant Workers on labor standards and protection of overseas seafarers. Fifth, it is to afford greater protection to seafarers from nefarious practices that threaten their livelihood and compromise their well-being. Six is to promote the safety of the general public who depend on the skills and competencies of the Filipino seafarers. And last, it is to identify the roles of various government agencies and key stakeholders to achieve the objectives and ensure the effective implementation of this proposed measure. Siyempre, kailangan po natin identify yung mga roles ng government agencies and key stakeholders para masigurado po natin na yung layunin po ng panukalang batas na ito ay ma-achieve po natin, and to ensure also that the rights of the seafarer, bilang sila po yung nasa gitna nitong panukalang batas po na ito, ay patuloy na maitaguyod. Who are those covered under this particular proposed measure? It states here, it shall cover Filipino seafarers who are engaged, employed, or work in any capacity on board a ship or a vessel plying international waters, whether Philippine registered or foreign registered. It shall likewise include Filipino cadets in accordance with the provisions of Chapter 18, Education and Training of Seafarers and Cadets. However, this particular proposed measure shall not cover Filipino seafarers on board the following categories of ships: warships and naval auxiliaries, government ships not engaged in commercial operations, ships of traditional build as may be defined under existing rules and regulations on fishing vessels. For ships or vessels plying international waters, but are governed by international treaties, agreements, or memoranda aimed at increasing and facilitating trade, tourism, and economic development within a particular region, pertinent agencies shall exercise regulatory supervision over the seafarers on board, subject to appropriate exemptions, guidelines, and conditions that may be issued by the Department of Transportation, Marina, DMW, DOLE, and other concerned agencies. So, ang tanong, ano naman yung application po nitong proposed Magna Carta to domestic seafarers? Because it's all about Filipino seafarers. So in a sense, it covers the entirety, both overseas and domestic seafarers. But under Section 5, klaro po kung anong specific provisions po ng panukalang batas nito ang mag-apply po sa mga domestic seafarers po natin. Seafarers who are engaged, employed, or work in any capacity on board domestic ships shall be principally covered by PD number 442 as amended, or the Labor Code of the Philippines, and other applicable laws, rules, and regulations, but they shall also be covered by the following provisions of this Act. First, the seafarers' rights. Second, women in the maritime industry, the duties of seafarers, emergency rescue of domestic seafarers, manning levels and crew competency requirements, inspection and enforcement, green lane for overseas and domestic seafarers, the requirements for Philippine registered ships on shipboard training, and incentives and awards granted to the maritime industry. Dito, nagkakaroon po ng distinction. Ano po yung domestic seafarer sa overseas seafarer? Domestic seafarers refers to seafarer who has been engaged, employed, or works in any capacity on board a domestic ship. So, siya po yung tinatawag po natin na domestic seafarer. For overseas seafarer, this refers to a seafarer who has been engaged, employed, or works in any capacity on board a ship or vessel plying international waters, whether Philippine registered or foreign registered. Sila po yung tinatawag po natin na overseas seafarer. And for purposes of this Act, an overseas seafarer is deemed engaged as such if he or she has signed a valid employment contract and is already at the point of hire for his or her departure. And sino naman po yung tinutukoy po natin na kadete? Cadet refers to a student of a maritime education institution who is at least 16 years of age and required to undergo training on board a registered ship covered by this Act to fulfill a maritime degree or technical course. Ngayon, ano yung mga seafarers' rights na pinag-uusapan po natin? First, it is right to just terms and conditions of work. Of course, seafarers shall, under Section 7, shall have a right to safe and secure workplace that complies with safety standards. For terms and conditions of employment, decent working and living conditions on board the ship, and appropriate medical care for both overseas and domestic seafarers, and additional confirmatory diagnostic tests for overseas seafarers, as well as welfare measures and other forms of health and social protection. So ano pa po ba yung mga rights na nakapaloob po rito? Section 8 provides for right to self-organization and to collective bargaining. Section 9 refers to right to education advancement and training at reasonable and affordable costs. Section 10 provides for right to information. Section 11, right to information of a seafarer's family or next of kin. Section 12, right to safe passage and safe travel. Section 13, right to consultation. Section 14, right against discrimination. Section 15, right to be protected against all forms of harassment and bullying. Section 16, right to free legal representation. Section 17, right to an appropriate grievance mechanism. Section 18, right to immediate medical attention. Section 19, right to access to communication. Section 20, right to record of employment or certificate of employment. Section 21, right to a fair treatment in the event of a maritime accident. Section 22, right to a fair medical assessment. And Section 23, right to vote in national elections. So those are the litany of rights that are provided for under this proposed measure. And under Chapter 5, the duties of the seafarer. What are these? Of course, it is to faithfully comply with and observe the terms and conditions of one's employment contract. Second, to abide by lawful and reasonable company personnel policies and procedures and the code of ethics for seafarers. To follow and observe the chain of command on board the ship or while ashore. To be diligent in performing one's duties relating to the ship, its stores, equipment, and cargo. To continually improve one's professional competency. To conduct oneself in an orderly and respectful manner towards shipmates, passengers, shippers, stevedores, port authorities, etc. To conduct oneself in accordance with moral, ethical, and social norms, to be responsible for one's health while on board, and, of course, to perform one's duties in a responsible and sustainable manner should one engage in various economic activities related to ocean, seas, and the coasts. And this proposed measure also provides for women against discrimination. Section 24 provides discrimination against women seafarers. Example of this discrimination would be payment of a lesser compensation by virtue of their gender. So are the litany of rights as mentioned a while ago. But we need, of course, to identify also the roles of actors in the maritime industry to make sure that these rights will be fulfilled and the welfare of our seafarers will be promoted. So first we go to the government. And under government, we have the DMW. And the primary role of the DMW is to ensure that the standard working and living conditions of overseas seafarers of ocean-going ships of Philippine or foreign registry are met. In this regard, it shall issue the standard employment contract containing at least the minimum standards for seafarers' employment for ocean-going Philippine or foreign registered ships. The DMW shall also inspect, accredit, and license manning agencies to ensure that the rights, benefits, working and living conditions of seafarers are met, ensure that the fast and efficient way processing employment contracts, renewal of bonding license, accreditation principles, and enrollment of vessels. Will also extend immediate assistance to overseas seafarers or their families or next of kin, including the repatriation of distressed seafarers. To develop and implement a full cycle and comprehensive national reintegration program for seafarers, and to maintain a registry of all seafarers for ocean-going ships of foreign registry. And, of course, after DMW, we also have the Marina, who will be performing a crucial task in ensuring the competency of our seafarers. In a nutshell, Marina shall ensure the competency of our seafarers. It shall have jurisdiction in the entirety of education, training, as well as the practice of profession by a seafarer. In this regard, shall issue the appropriate standards and guidelines for qualification, training, and certification of domestic seafarers. It shall issue certificate of competency to seafarers, maintain a registry of all seafarers for domestic and ocean-going ships of Philippine registry. It shall ensure compliance of all Philippine registered ships operating domestically in coordination with the Philippine Coast Guard. It shall issue guidelines on green lane for overseas and domestic seafarers, and shall also have jurisdiction over maritime education. And in consultation with CHED, it shall ensure the quality, standard, competence of maritime students and graduates, to adopt and implement appropriate academic and training standards, including required learning facilities, to accredit, regulate, and monitor maritime education institutions offering maritime degree programs or technical courses. Of course, it shall also have the power to close or phase out or revoke the license or accreditation of substandard maritime education institutions or specific degree programs, courses, or training, to enhance the capacity of MHCIs to develop both international and domestic maritime degree programs, ensure that the curriculum of the MHCIs offering international maritime degrees comply with the standards as set forth in the STCW and all other applicable maritime labor conventions, taking into account, of course, the IMO model courses. It shall also accredit, regulate, and monitor maritime training institutions, approve non-degree maritime courses developed by Maritime Education and Training Institutions or TESDA, create mechanisms for the ladderization of both international and domestic maritime degree programs and non-degree programs, maritime courses developed by TESDA, and regulate the fees charged by maritime education institutions consistent with Section 83 of the Act, and regulate the fees charged by maritime training institutions. It shall also determine the applicability of shipboard training, including its duration for domestic maritime degree programs or non-degree programs in accordance with best practices in maritime education and training, and issue the necessary guidelines for the effective implementation of cadetship program taking into account the nature of the maritime degree. It shall also provide incentives to owners of commercially operating domestic ships that are reconfigured for use in shipboard training of a substantial number of cadets. So after discussing the rules of DMW, Marina, we now go to DOLE. And the of course, is to ensure that the standard working and living conditions of domestic seafarers are met. And in this regard, it shall issue the necessary guidelines on the employment and working conditions of domestic seafarers, issue to ship owners the Maritime Labor Certificate for ocean-going ships or Certificate of Compliance for domestic ships, and inspect and ensure compliance with general labor and occupational safety and health standards of Philippine registered ships operating internationally. It shall also formulate the Maritime Occupational Safety and Health Standards, or MOSHS, and authorize recognized organizations to conduct inspection of Philippine registered ships operating internationally. And next, the role of the PCG, Philippine Coast Guard, and its primary roles to conduct the port state control inspections of vessels, including all foreign flag vessels. And we go to CHED, whose primary role under this proposed measure is to assist Marina in setting the standards and monitoring the performance of maritime education programs and in MHEIs. And then we go to the Department of Health. It is to regulate the activities and operations of all clinics, which conduct physical, optical, dental, psychological, and other similar examinations referred to as health examination on overseas seafarers. And of course, the role of the DFA, and primarily, the DFA shall provide a priority lane to expeditiously process the application of new passports or renewal of expiring passports of overseas seafarers. Then, of course, we have the OWA, and one of the primary functions of OWA under this particular measure is to establish seafarer welfare centers to make sure that the welfare of our seafarers are really taken care of. And they shall provide assistance to seafarers in the enforcement of contractual obligations by agencies and or by their principals. And it shall also give legal assistance to all our seafarers. We also have the NCMB, which shall perform mediation and conciliation functions in the settlement of maritime labor disputes involving seafarers, both overseas and domestic, covered by collective bargaining agreement. With the NLRC, opposed to the NCMB, it shall adjudicate labor and management disputes involving seafarers, both overseas and domestic, but are without CBA. And we also have the PAO, Public Attorney's Office, which is mandated to render free of charge legal representation, assistance, and counseling to seafarers or their families in criminal, civil, labor, administrative, and other quasi-judicial cases. And finally, we have TESDA, which in consultation with the CHED and subject to approval of Marina shall develop, establish, and implement non-degree courses and programs on maritime education. Now, we've discussed the roles of the government, and we shall be discussing now the roles of the employers. The employers, represented of course by foreign ship owners or principals, and the manning agencies. The foreign ship owners or principals are principally liable for any and all claims arising out of the implementation of the employment contract involving seafarers. And they are required to institute measures on health emergency prevention in accordance with flag state regulations and World Health Organizations guidelines, including necessary disinfection, decontamination, derating, or other measures necessary to prevent the spread of infection or contamination. Now we go to the manning agencies. And one of the primary functions is to ensure that we note that only duly licensed manning agencies shall be allowed to operate and engage in the recruitment and placement of seafarers following existing laws, rules, and regulations. They are supposed to or required to verify before employment that the seafarers recruited or placed are competent, qualified, and possess the documents necessary for the job concerned, and that your employment contracts or SEC or Standard Employment Contract conform with applicable laws, rules, regulations, and the CBA, which may form part of the said agreements, if any. They are also required to ensure, as far as practicable, that the ship owner has the means to protect the seafarers from being stranded in a foreign port. They are supposed to or required to repatriate seafarers to the point of hire. They are also required to jointly and become severely and jointly liable with the principal or ship owner for any and all claims arising out of the employment contract involving seafarers. Now, as we near the end, we'll discuss also the role of the education sector. Of course, we have the maritime higher education institutions, which are also key player in the whole maritime industry. And their primary role is to ensure that maritime students are both academically equipped and technically competent, because this is one of the primary objectives of this particular proposed measure, to ensure that our seafarers are really competent and qualified. As such, they are also required to ensure that they have the adequate facilities to teach, train, and develop maritime students leading to their degrees or to complete the course of their study. As to shipboard training, in case there are no adequate facilities, then mechanisms should be in place to enable the students to comply with this requirement. Also, can also develop and offer either domestic maritime degrees or international maritime degrees. So what's the difference between these two degrees? Domestic maritime degree refers to degrees approved by the Marina in coordination with CHED that is geared towards training, education, and certification of domestic seafarers, those that are engaged, as we mentioned a while ago, within the domestic ships. An international maritime degree refers to degrees approved by the Marina in coordination with CHED that is geared towards training, education, and certification of international seafarers. This is actually one of the new things that were introduced in this proposed measure, in a way for us to be able to help also the development of our domestic maritime sector. And shipboard training, this is a requirement for international maritime degree programs. Take note, shipboard training is only a requirement for international maritime degree programs under Section 75, unless of course it will also be required by Marina from our domestic maritime degree programs. And consistent with Republic Act number 844 or the Act of 1953, all MHCIs offering international maritime degree programs shall be required to have their own training ships, simulators, or other similar technologies. So, as we mentioned here, training ships is just one of those for compliance. Or, in the absence of any of those, they shall have directly entered into agreements with local or international shipping companies, ship owners, or manning agencies for the shipboard training programs of their students or cadets. As we mentioned a while ago, the primary role of MHCI is to ensure that the students are equipped academically, and of course, they are given the necessary technical competence. And these are necessary to make sure that the students will be able to finish the degrees that they are enrolled in these MHCIs. And finally, we go to the Philippine registered ships operating domestically and internationally. And as provided for under this act, all Philippine registered ships operating domestically are mandated to enter into agreement with any of the MHCIs for the shipboard training of the latter's cadets for domestic maritime degree or for non-degree programs. The number of cadets required to be accommodated shall be in accordance with such rules and regulations as may be issued by Marina. So this is one of the means how we can ensure the competence of our seafarers, as well as to support our MHCIs to be able to comply with the requirements of this proposed measure. Also, Philippine registered ships operating internationally shall also enter into agreement with any of the MHCIs for the shipboard training of the latter's cadets. So as we see, it's the entirety. And we hope that when this particular proposed measure is finally signed by our President, we will be able to really make sure that our seafarers are not just qualified, but really competent, and also have the academic they are really academically equipped. They are equipped with theoretical as well as the practical knowledge to become effective and efficient seafarer. Because of course, what we want to create are world-class Filipino seafarers. With that, maraming salamat po sa inyo, and just like you and me, we really hope that this particular proposed measure will soon be submitted by the House and the Senate to our President and will be signed soon by our President into law. Once again, maraming salamat po sa inyo, at mabuhay po ang ating Marinong Filipino.
Thank you very much, Congressman Ron Salo. That's a pre-recorded presentation of the congressman. Later on, he will be joining us. Now let's meet our distinguished panelists. Ms. Sonia Malaluan, Administrator, Maritime Industry Authority, Marina. Mr. Zar Manglikmot II, President, Philippine Association of Maritime Institutions, PAMI. Mr. Edgardo Egay Nicolas, Administrator, Philippine Coastwise Shipping Association, PCSA. Attorney Noli Partido, Head of Legal Department, Associated Marine Officers and Seamen's Union of the Philippines, AMOSUP. Captain Bilal Ahmed, Chairman, International Maritime Employers Council, IMEC. Mr. Helio Vicente, Director of Employment Affairs, International Chamber of Shipping, ICS. And Mr. Augusto San Diego, Director, Department of Migrant Workers, DMW. Let's start our critique with the perspective of AMOSUP, the largest union of Filipino seafarers, which is composed of more than 100,000 members. Attorney Partido, is there really a need for a Magna Carta of Filipino Seafarers? What is the importance of this Magna Carta?
Well, the Magna Carta of seafarers, of Filipino seafarers, actually, maybe we can call it the Bible, no, of Filipino seafarers, the Bible of the rights of Filipino seafarers, and it is a codified, I would say, literature of the rights of seafarers, and you can see the guidelines on how their employment should be governed, and it puts into picture the significance of the role of the whole gamut structure, no? The whole structure of Philippine maritime labor industry. And again, this is the passage of this proposed bill would be I would say, a testament of the maritime labor industry's commitment to the, I would say, the global maritime or global shipping industry of providing competent, qualified, effective, and efficient seafarers. I would say, of course, the passage of this bill has long been awaited, but AMOSUP, for its part, we submit, we subscribe, and respect the wisdom of both houses of Congress, the lower and the upper, in coming up with this final and last version of the Magna Carta. Of course, we hope and pray that when submitted to our beloved President, His Excellency Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos, that it would soon be acted and signed into law. Thank you.
ICS and IMEC are two of the world's major maritime employers. ICS represents the world's national ship owner associations and over 80% of the world merchant fleet, while IMEC represents more than 260 maritime employers. How is the Magna Carta of Filipino Seafarers perceived by the global ship owners? Let's start with Captain Bilal Ahmed. Sir.
Good afternoon and good morning, everyone. Lynn, thank you very much for inviting me to attend this very important webinar. First of all, I'd like to thank the Philippine government, people in the Congress and Senate, and the industry bodies who for many years worked hard to ensure that this bill comes to reality. So we are all happy, even internationally, and I can see locally as well, that finally we have a document in hand that we can work on. Many of us who work in a global shipping environment, we know that Magna Carta is nothing other than implementation of the MLC 2006. And I remember very well, it took many years to actually formulate MLC in the first place. So in many ways, the Philippine government is probably taken quite a bit of time to codify, as Attorney Noli was saying, the MLC requirements. So hopefully, once this bill goes through, the MLC implementation within the Philippines will be effective. We are happy to see that a lot of rights that has been part of MLC has been put into this bill, and local and national interest also inside. Most importantly, MLC was meant for seafarers' rights, and this Magna Carta provides that. For one of the reasons that we all know the delay, or rather why it has taken many years, is because various interest groups trying to enlighten the people in charged with creating this Magna Carta had to listen to local, national, and overseas interest groups. As a largest employer organizations globally, I think IMAG and ICS has a big interest to see why and how the bill should come out proper, and it should not affect the competitiveness of the Filipino seafarers. Many years of work, but last 12 months, there was a lot of energy from overseas employers organizations to ensure that the bill should not be passed in a way that will affect the as I mentioned, Filipino seafarers' employment competitiveness. Without going into further details, there was some requirements that we wanted to be included into Magna Carta. We had discussions on the highest level of the government, but we can see that the one of the most important element that the international employers wanted has finally not been included. Though this is disappointing at the moment, we hope that the bill, before the bill is signed by the president, we will have opportunity to have a discussion on that missing item or the item that has been taken out. This is important because we feel that the rights of the seafarers, in order to ensure that one of the key elements is that no avenue should be kept open for abuse of the rights of the Filipino seafarers. And I think we are very clear on that, which are the areas that the bill should look at. At the moment, the bill is not yet a law, and we still hope that we'll have an opportunity that our concerns are included into the bill, and it is not to the benefit of the employers, it is the benefit of the seafarers, and we have mentioned it many times. So while we, as an industry organization, really wish to thank that the Magna Carta has come to light, but we still hope that before it is signed into law, our concerns are once again be discussed and an opportunity is given to us to actually clarify it one more time. This would be my initial comments. If there is any questions later on, maybe I would be happy to reply.
Mr. Julio Vicente from ICS, please.
Mabuhay everyone, and every corner of the Philippines as a seafarer. So I would really be remiss if my very first comment were not to convey my very best wishes to all mariners in the Philippines and beyond as we celebrate their special day. I'm gonna be a little bit more somber, but only for a second, if you allow. I know this is really very much meant to be a celebration, but I think it's also important that we reflect into some of the challenges and some of the opportunities that seafarers face, and how can we not spare even a minute to reflect on the very tragic passing of the Filipino seafarer on board the MV Tutor in the Red Sea on the 12th of June. We as an industry have utterly condemned those attacks, which contravene the fundamental rights of seafarers, which is what we are essentially discussing today. But actually, it's also worth remembering, and I think this is very easily often forgotten, that we still have crew members of the Galaxy Leader seized all the way back in November 2023, still held captive, remain hostage. We still have 17 out of 25 crew members of the MSC Aries also still in captivity. So as today we take the day to remember these unsung heroes of global trade, we must spare a thought for these phenomenal people working on board, and sometimes the dangers that they're exposed to. I'd also like to extend, of course, my congratulations to His Excellency Hans-Leo Kakdak for his reappointment as Interim Secretary of the Department of Migrant Workers. I think Congressman Salo did a really good job in highlighting how the DMW and Marina are fundamental to the way that international instruments are implemented in support of seafarers and their employment. So nearly 11 years on since the entry into effect of the ILO's International Maritime Labour Convention, as Bilal said, it's been a long time coming. So in principle, this is certainly an instrument that we would support, as we would support any other instrument that is implemented for the purposes of ensuring that there is a global playing field with respect to how we support seafarers, how we support their employment. We really are in a unique industry in many ways, in being the only industrial sector to have such a comprehensive global regime in place that sets out mandatory standards for the employment of the world's nearly 2 million merchant seafarers, alongside recommendations and so on. And the Philippines, as we know, plays a huge and significant role in that. So on this day of the Seafarer, on behalf of ICS, I would like to reaffirm our commitment and the commitment of ship owners to this special global framework for seafarers' welfare, well-being, decent work, and employment conditions. Let us not forget that alongside IMO SOLAS, MARPOL, and STCW conventions, the MLC is very much recognized as a key pillar, one of the 4 pillars of the shipping industry's global regulatory framework. And in the Philippines, the Magna Carta is intended to really become this enabling law, not only for the MLC, but also other international conventions, not least, as Congressman Salo laid out, the STCW convention as well. But as it has been alluded to, President Marcos has still not signed the bill. As an industry, we have made our concerns about this, the exclusion of provisions that we believe are key to create a supporting framework for us as a collective industry, supporting seafarers and supporting the employers. So I'll leave it there in terms of my opening remarks, and then I'll happily come in and add a little bit more. Thank you.
Since Hilly already mentioned about the unfortunate situation of our seafarers due to the geopolitical tensions. In the midst of these geopolitical tensions, in which our seafarers are unfortunately becoming collateral damage, how is the Magna Carta of Filipino Seafarers safeguard their rights and welfare? In the absence of the Magna Carta, since it's not yet being signed, how does the government protect the rights and welfare of our seafarers who have perished or whose lives were endangered? May we hear from DMW, please? Director Augusto Sanjego, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Ma'am Lean. But first and foremost, I will all the seafarers around the world a happy Seafarers Day to them. And with your question, Ma'am Lean, in the absence of the Magna Carta, but we are hoping the Department of Migrant Working, the Department of Migrant Workers is expecting really that we will really be pushing for the approval of the Magna Carta the soonest. And going to your question on how we are addressing that particular problem, I just wanted to inform you that we also issued a circular or an administrative order based on the ITF and the IBF resolution pertaining to the high risk and warlike zone areas where our seafarers are traversing, in which there are corresponding benefits or entitlements and protections that are enlisted in that particular issuance. So actually, we'll be issuing again another circular because the effectivity of the amendment is June 19, I believe so. So we really have to update that particular issuance, and within the week, that will be issued. So nakalagay po doon, Ma'am Lynn, nakasaad po doon yung mga seafarers natin. They have the right to refuse. We even have issued a circular as well, where they can call the DMW. We have a hotline for that. We have an email for our seafarers. Should they wish to not to sail, continue sailing, then they have the right to do so. So we are there. We've been monitoring. If in cases that are reported attacks, we immediately call the licensed manning agencies to report to us and inform us updates and what really happened to our seafarers. And at the same time, the LMAs are also, being reminded to comply immediately of their responsibility to report whatever incidents that happen to our Filipino seafarers or to the ships. And they're in collaboration with their principals. So ganun po yung ating pamamaraan sa kasalukuyan, at sinisigurado naman po natin na nandun po tayo at nakikiramay o di na naman kaya nakikiisa ating po mga Filipino seafarers and their families, for us to okay. And we're one of helping our Filipino seafarers in these particular situations, and we are really ready to address this particular. But of course, it may not be perfect at this point. But our Secretary Hans Leo Kakdak, every day, he's been trying to do his best to address these particular issues, and sooner we'll be coming out with another guidelines that will really be, guiding our industry on how we will be addressing the issues that confronts our seafarers in the high risk and the warlike zones. Ma'am Lynn.
Yes, may we hear from Congressman Salo, please?
Thank you very much, Ms. Lynn. So good afternoon to everyone. And of course, good morning to all those coming from different parts of the world. And I certainly agree with the statement by Director Sanjego. Even in the absence of this particular law, Ms. Lynn, of course, there are a lot of other rules and regulations wherein the DMW can anchor, as well as the international or international treaties or agreements that the Philippines is a party to, that can be the basis for the issuance of the DMW. So in a nutshell, this particular Magna Carta Filipino Seafarers, as was mentioned a while ago by Attorney Noli, is the Bible. So basically, at the end of the day, we don't need to look at all these several instruments, international instruments, as well as regulations issued by DMW and other
agencies of the government, but we can just look at this one Magna Carta. It's a complete quote-unquote Bible of the rights and obligations of seafarers. But of course, it also grants all these other agencies of the government the clear mandate to ensure the protection and the promotion of the rights of our seafarers. So this will be the basis for the issuances of subsequent issuances of new rules or regulations that are consistent with this proposed Magna Carta. And of course, I wish to echo before I end my comment in this particular matter. I wish to echo the comments made by ICS Director Helio Vicente as we join the Filipino and the world seafarers. As we join them in this celebration, we also remember those who have perished through this particular risk that have been causing undue risk to our seafarers, particularly in these certain parts of the world. Thank you, Ms. Lynn.
Would like to ask this question, coming from a director or from an owner's representative, Mr. Yusmes, is actually in Greece. He cannot, okay, in what way do seafarers benefit from the Magna Carta in addition to the rights, benefits they already have under international conventions and existing CBAs? Salo?
Yes, Ms. Lynn. So as I mentioned a while ago, there already a summary, quote unquote, a codification of all these rights. And of course, there are still other rights that are mentioned in this particular proposed Magna Carta. As I mentioned in the presentation, it covers the entirety of the creation of a competent, qualified, and world-class Filipino seafarer. So from education to cadetship or training to being a professional. And while he's exercising or acting as a professional seafarer, and later on, soon when he hangs up his gloves and be a regular, not anymore practice in this practice of profession, the protection granted by the provisions of the Magna Carta will still apply to him or her. So we note, of course, the different agencies of the government, including DMW and OWA, to ensure that the welfare of the seafarers will always be promoted. I note the usual comments of most seafarers that the OWA, for one, I hope they were invited this particular webinar, or they are watching this or participating, although vicariously, that most of the seafarers have actually commented that for the longest time, OWA has not been considering quote-unquote seafarers as part of the OFWs who are entitled to the benefits and protection of the welfare. So in this particular proposed Magna Carta, the OWA has been specifically mentioned and mandated to actually establish welfare centers to make sure that the rights and the interests and the welfare of the seafarers will really be promoted.
Okay, we heard from ICS and IMEC a while ago, their reaction about the recent, even if not directly stated by Captain Ahmed and Mr. Helio, they're concerned about the deletion of a section wherein which is deemed to address the ambulance chasing in the Philippines. How, if passed into law without this section 59 of the Magna Carta of Filipino Seafarers, how will the Philippines address the persistent challenge of ambulance chasing in the overseas employment of our seafarers? Salo?
Thank you, Ms. Lynn. Of course, the ultimate provision that will really address the concerns relating to the proliferation of ambulance chasing would certainly be the section that has been deleted. But I note that there are several provisions in the Magna Carta that are geared towards addressing this particular issue as well. We note with respect to the concern that most of the seafarers actually file cases because of the delay in the payment of the claims of the seafarers themselves. In this particular provision, in this particular proposed measure, a clear period is provided once the complete documents have been submitted by the claimant. We note here that it should be within 15 days and within after 15 days from submission and been checking that all the documents are complete, then the payment should be given. Number two, in case we note here that in case there are disagreements with respect to the grading of the injury that has been committed or incurred by the claimant, there's a process to determine through a third-party doctor to ensure that the appropriate grading would really be considered. So there's a third-party doctor. Third, we also note here, Ms. Lynn, that most of the time it was mentioned to us that seafarers become free to ambulance chasing because the welfare, as I mentioned a while ago, is not being really promoted. They oftentimes, makikita po natin, allow me to speak in Filipino, oftentimes makikita raw po natin yung mga kababayan po nating seafarers sa may kalaw. And palakad-lakad po sila doon. And oftentimes, these seafarers, when you see them there, oftentimes they are the ones that they usually become free to ambulance chasing. This is one of the reasons why we mandate the OWA to provide the welfare centers that will cater to the needs and the concerns of the seafarers. And fourth, we also provided here that OWA, for all the seafarers who are members of OWA, should provide for free legal assistance. And even the PAO, Public Attorney's Office, is also mandated to provide free legal assistance to our seafarers. So these are means or measures how we can actually address also, lessen the incidents that our seafarers will become free to ambulance chasing. But of course, as I mentioned a while ago, the ultimate would be that particular section that had been deleted. Nonetheless, I filed a separate bill amending the ambulance chasing law, specifically that provides an amendment through this particular proposed section that has been deleted. Thank you, Ms. Lynn.
May we hear from Joint Mining Group, JMG, the largest association of mining agencies, Mr. Erickson Marquez, please. Your reaction.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Yes, thank you for the comments of Congressman Salo, and we definitely appreciate the continuing efforts of the congressman to continue pushing for the what we feel is the better solution to the end of ambulance chasing. What we see in the new final law is just a semblance of how they would like to address this increasing problem of the industry. In the objectives letter E, it simply says afford greater protection to seafarers from nefarious practices that threaten their livelihood and compromise their well-being. No, there's no more mention of ambulance chasing, unlike the original bill, but we do see the earnest effort of the government. I believe this is probably coming from the Department of Labor and DMW to put provisions in this new law that will actually deter or at least make it difficult for these ambulance chasers to take advantage of the what they were able to do before by putting into this law certain provisions as mentioned by Congressman Salo. It is now the responsibility of the third doctor has now been made more important in this law. it says there that the third doctor's opinion shall be final and binding on both parties, no? So we hope that even before a case is brought to the judicial bodies, this particular important decision or determination should have been finished by the doctors who are taking the responsibility to make a decision on what grading the injury falls, no? So we also see some efforts to also make sure that ambulance chasers will not be able to charge more than 10%, no? We can see that if they did get more than 10%, it says in this new law that that is considered to be held in trust for the seafarer. And we hope that the seafarers will now know what that means, no? As far as those who are victimized by ambulance chasers. So really, if we take a deeper look at the problem, it is really interpretation of the existing standard employment contract, where we already have provisions that should protect the seafarer and the ship owners from getting unfair decisions from the judicial bodies, no? If only the determination of the grading system will be made strictly fair for both parties, we believe that there will be less acts of ambulance chasing in the future, no? Of course, we see also very big effort to improve the maritime education. We only hope that the requirements being put here are not too tedious for the schools to be able to survive if they do not have a training ship, no? But we believe that what should be done is really to take a look at how we train cadets, how long they should stay on board. Right now, it's 12 months or 36 months. There are only two options. We believe that in most countries, they only train for 6 months, but they make sure that these 6 months are really devoted into proper training. And I think that is what we don't see in the Philippines. Of course, we cannot compare cadetship training on board domestic vessels compared to the training on board international vessels. And it seems that what we are getting, the people who are getting who pass this requirement are mostly coming from the domestic, which means that we are getting the students who did not actually get trained well enough compared to those training in the overseas. So we hope the Marina will take a serious look at how we are looking at cadetship training, considering that we have many schools now who are turning out really competent and qualified cadets, no, with all their sophisticated equipment. So we hope to be able to participate in discussing with our government how to now proceed and develop new policies on cadetship and maritime education. That's all, Mr. Mamlin, for our initial comments.
We'll pause for a break. When we return, Congressman Salo will address the issues and concerns on another contentious provision of the Magna Carta of Filipino Seafarers, which is the Chapter 18 on the education and training of seafarers and cadets.
Are you looking for a new escapade on board? Come and join our company, because here, we see and we got you. In Elberg, we bring together our experience, our commitment to quality and continual quest for improvement with the readiness to cope with the diversified demands and needs of our clients in accordance with regulatory requirements to deliver the best possible service. We value our seafarers as key workers and, as a company, we are committed to ensuring that the values we build are responsibly protected to provide satisfaction and to build lasting relationships with our clients. We are committed to integrity. We are proactive. We are innovative. We work with excellence. We value teamwork. We work with the utmost professionalism. In Elberg, we care about your welfare. We offer programs such as the Crew Welfare Program, Career Development Plan for Officers, Electrician Cadets, Fitter Cadets, and a Cadetship Program. What are you waiting for? Join now!
This is the Magna Carta of Filipino Seafarers, Chartering the Future webinars, Marino World's webinar in celebration of the Day of the Seafarer. Now we hear from the largest organization of the maritime institutions, PAMI. Mr. Manglikmot, your views please are that of PAMI regarding the Magna Carta of Filipino Seafarers, particularly the provision including the provision that includes education and training.
Thank you, Lynn, and good afternoon to all your listeners. And again, like a happy Seafarers Day to all. Thank you, Lynn, for giving us the opportunity to present our issue on the Magna Carta for Seafarers. And above all and foremost, I would like to make it clear that the position of PAMI is that we are not against the Magna Carta for seafarers as a whole. However, we are continuing to oppose the inclusion of education and training in the Magna Carta for seafarers. The Magna Carta for seafarers, as mentioned by Captain Ahmed earlier, was an enabling law for MLC 2006. As we all know, if it's an enabling law for MLC 2006, it is for the general welfare of seafarers. Students at its present stage cannot yet be considered seafarers. That's why we are wondering why education is part of a law, of an enabling law for the welfare for seafarers. The education and training has been amply addressed by RA 10635. That's why we're still wondering why is it still included in the Magna Carta for seafarers. But nevertheless, let us discuss without admitting anything. If we want to produce qualified, competent, and qualified seafarers, there are three realms that you should consider. Three areas of learning. One, of course, is the education. Second is training. And lastly is the shipboard training or OGT or internship. However, in the bill, if you would notice, they have mentioned about internship, they have mentioned about training, they mentioned about internship, shipboard training, and they have mentioned about education. But there's nothing about training. The training centers. I have not seen anything about the training centers here. But again, you know, Congress has enacted laws already related to the implementation of the STCW Convention. These are, to name a few, these are RA 8544 and 10635. as well as presidential issuance such as Executive Order 75 and 63. And yet, we are incorporating maritime education in another bill that is the Magna Carta for Seafarers. This gives the impression that the Philippines lack the confidence that the prevailing laws do not really exactly address STCW implementations. And this has already been passed by Congress. We believe that Congress, as the policy-making branch of the government, must endeavor not to add more laws, but together make a national maritime policy which shall serve as the foundation of all legislation. That's why, again, for me, this is my first initial comments on this. Again, I would like to reiterate that PAMI stand is that we are not against the Magna Carta for seafarers. But what we are opposing is the inclusion of education and training in the Magna Carta for seafarers because it is already properly addressed in RA 10635. Thank you, Lynn.
Yeah. Congressman Salo, please, your response.
Yes, thank you very much, Ms. Lin. Certainly, we respect the points of view raised by Mr. Sar Manglikmot. Certainly, he has his point of view. But this particular law is as you mentioned, it's a policy of the government. And we note that the highest policy-making body is Congress itself. So, in a sense, this is how Congress looks at it. Number two, with respect to his concern that the objectives, it's just an implementation of MLC, I beg to disagree because the objectives are clearly mentioned under Section 3. So if he will just certainly read this particular provision, it outlines there that it's not just about MLC. Number three, it also specifically mentions in this particular objectives, it's really the creation of the entirety of a seafarer, from being a student, so the creation of a competent, qualified, and world-class Filipino seafarer. So that includes education and training. So, of course, he has concern with respect to training centers. If we is just going to read the provisions, there's specific provision that pertains to training centers, and this will be within also the jurisdiction of Marina, wherein Marina will provide or issue the necessary guidelines with respect to the fees that they are charging. And of course, also what specific training are being required under specific international treaties or agreements. So certainly, as I mentioned, Ms. Ian, we respect the concerns or issues or points of view raised by Mr. Sarman. But certainly, how legislators and policymakers look at it, they look at it from a different perspective. Wherein education and training are core to the development of a competent, highly qualified, as well as world-class Filipino seafarers. Thank you, Ms. Lee.
Marina Administrator Sonia Balaluan, your reaction, please. Are the current laws and policies sufficient to efficiently regulate our educational and training institutions? What are your thoughts on the Magna Carta's provisions that will empower Marina to institute and execute reforms in the education and training of our Filipino seafarers? You have a big role in this Magna Carta of Filipino Seafarers, right?
Thank you, Ms. Lynn, and good afternoon to everyone, and happy Seafarers Day to all our Filipino seafarers. And yes, initially, we have the same position as the position of PAMI that education should have not been considered in the Magna Carta. However, to answer your question, whether we have enough regulation to support the implementation of the convention and to ensure quality seafarers or competent seafarers, I could say yes, because we have recently been included in the whitelist of the IMO. We have just completed our IMO member state audit, And we have the continuance of the recognition that was never lost, no recognition by the European Union. And wherever you go, you will receive all positive and high praises for our Filipino seafarers. So the answer to the first question is yes. So that's why initially we maintain, and personally, I will always say that we don't want to rock the boat. Well, we have reached such level. However, on the second version, we did not also submitted any objection nor support to that provision giving Marina the jurisdiction on education. But in retrospect, I guess, and I have said this to Congressman Salo, that we will leave that to the wisdom of our legislators. And I guess it is about time that we reach that situation where we truly will be implementing a single maritime administration in terms of the implementation of the IMO conventions, because we are the Philippines is the only member state who has this sort of fragmented, no, yung ating structure in terms of implementation. Personally, I don't like to take the challenge because it will be a huge task to change the system that we have been implementing, that we have so far overcome the challenges in the 11 years of implementation of the amended STCW. But however, I guess the timing could also be right, because we won't be subjected to any audit in the near future, because as we have recently passed the independent evaluation, will be receiving technical assistance from the European Commission, and that we have completed our IMO mandatory member state audit. It would give us time in Marina to again implement these changes, because this will entail a lot of changes in the system, and I will not try to change the policies, because the policies, the standards should be in accordance with the convention, but it's more on the procedures on how we will do things, because it would be Marina's primary responsibility to ensure that our education system will continue to comply with what the convention requires us. So it would be a big challenge, but we will accept the challenge, and hopefully this is not only Marinas, but it's still a whole of nation approach. So we will be open, and we will welcome inputs from our stakeholders, and we will continue to dialogue with them, and for them to implement a participatory way of doing things, so that we could improve the way we do things. So thank you, Lynn.
All right. Maybe ask again our ship owners organizations, from ship owners organizations. Captain Bilal Ahmed. Thank you. Right. How's the competition improving outside? What are your standards in employing our seafarers, or even sponsoring cadets?
Yeah. Thanks, Lynn. I think it's a very broad question, and we probably need to refer back to the summit that we had last year, June, in Manila, where we spoke about the global shipping in the future and the need for the training, especially for that we are focusing today on the Filipino seafarers. We know there is a gap between the standards on various seafarers of various countries. And one thing we can say that Filipino seafarers are not on the top, but they are on the global scale, on the higher end of the spectrum, but they need to improve. So if you talk of competition of the Filipino seafarers with other nationals, more and more it will be decided by the competency of the Filipino seafarers. And as we have discussed many times, the ships and the machinery of today and tomorrow will be vastly different from what it was yesterday. So the seafarers who are competent for yesterday's vessels will no longer be competent for the future ships. So if we cannot keep up pace with the training that is needed, they will become uncompetitive. They will be not required anymore in the scale that we need today. So it is very important that a recognition of these is taken from the highest level of the government and the policy body and PAMI and rest of the training institutions that looks and takes care of these. From international perspective, we know that international expertise and assistance and support will be needed in a scale that probably was not envisaged before, probably was not thought of before. So this is quite different world we are getting into, and probably we are already in. And so for me, a challenge is coming, and Filipino seafarers, in order to be relevant, need to upgrade themselves at a much faster rate, at a much higher level. The only way that this can be done is obviously support, as I said, from the international employers and various bodies. In this way, Magna Carta becomes important. And as I was, time to time saying, this should have been already done and set aside. So basically, we can focus on the training needs of the seafarers. There is a minimum standards that probably Marina and other relevant government bodies are working on. But tomorrow's competency need and the seafarers need is not about minimum requirements. So if we wish to have Filipinos working on modern ships at a larger number that they are doing today, a minimum requirement will not be sufficient, will not be enough. So they will not be hireable. There are countries that is coming up much stronger than we are here in the Philippines. They're taking much stronger steps to support the industry. I think Philippines should look into that. And in order to get a global support, we need to make sure that our house is in order. And obviously Magna Carta plays a big role into that. And once again, I would like to see that the advice from international community is taken on board so that we can really work together. But I'd like to just say a word on this, that the shipping world of tomorrow is much more challenging than it has ever been. And we need to wake up to this fact. And the only way that can be done is obviously ensuring a industry relations that is acceptable to the global employers. At the same time, they can help bringing the expertise needed to train our seafarers. Thank you, Lynn.
Can PAMI ensure all of its members are fully compliant? Do you also use your programs?
Yes, with the help chain Marino right now, they come up with a new framework for evaluating and monitoring the schools, which is called the OBMI. And in these regulations, we are strictly following this. In fact, in the next few months, because of these changes, as mentioned earlier by Captain Ahmed, the changes in the world requirements, in the next few months, we have engaged several workshops for our faculty, for our school administrators, even for our students, so that we can fast track already the knowledge that is really required from them. In addition to that, going back, yes, Marina is very strict and CHED is very strict with all of these requirements in terms of carrying capacity, in terms of the curriculum and instructions, and also in terms of our deployment. And if, just to let everyone know, it is only the maritime education only maritime education in the Philippines that has a requirement of more than 80% deployment or employment, whichever you would consider. It is only in the maritime sector. Only maritime education. Other education programs do not have these qualifications or do not have this requirement. So we are, yes, indeed, trying our very best that to comply with all of these requirements laid down by CHED and Marina. That's why we believe, I am one with Ma'am Maluluan and Sir Erickson earlier that the education is improving, and we believe that this improvement is a result of the continued collaboration and cooperation between government, academe, and industry. That's why, katulad sinabi ni Mama Lulon, and I'm one with them, there's no need to rock the boat. The present framework of cooperation between the government, academe, and industry is resulting into positive results. We are included in the whitelist. We are recognized by the EU. So we don't need additional legislation. What we need is to strengthen our cooperation as in maritime stakeholders. Thank you, Lynn.
Are IMEC and ICS open to new collaborations with other schools, as well as expanded cooperation with recognized organizations such as PAMI, so that we can provide opportunities to other students while meeting the worldwide demand for skilled crew in the future? May we hear from Captain Bilal and Mr. Hillian, please?
Do you want me to go first? Or
Yeah, Helio,
Bilal?
please do. Yeah.
Yeah, just to add a little bit of color to this, and I'm gonna bring a little bit of a sort of global angle to this whole thing about cadetships, and perhaps there's lots of ways of looking at this, but one particular angle that I think is missed in all of these discussions, and by no means only in the Philippines, but perhaps we have an opportunity to start a conversation, and that's about creating space on board ships to provide the framework that is needed for more cadets to be able to join these ships. And one of the biggest challenges that we find is obviously the dues, the port dues, which are fairly high, and these are obviously have an impact, a lifetime impact in terms of the cost of running a ship. So we have had some very preliminary discussions at industry level about how we can really start to discuss with governments whether or not it is time to see what we can do about these port dues as a goodwill gesture to ultimately support what we all want to achieve, which is to have more cadets coming on board and getting the training that they need. But I think I need to also echo the very, very poignant comments made by Bilal earlier. The seafaring landscape is changing, and at a rapid pace. I know we keep talking about 2050, but actually a lot of the requirements are changing for today, for tomorrow. It really is changing as an industry. So having more berths will definitely be helpful, but I think that needs a level of cooperation that will go hopefully far beyond the conversation today. But I hate to bring this back, but I think I look at all of this in almost a package, if you like, because we can look at this in isolation, but ultimately I think the ability of ship owners as employers to be able to invest with confidence and with certainty is absolutely vital, and we cannot forget that. And to a certain degree, I would be remiss if I weren't very candid here and pointed to the fact that with how the bonding provision and escrow provision and the uncertainty that surrounds that has created a degree of trepidation among employers as to what the seafaring landscape in the Philippines will be. Now, we're not saying, look, the Philippines is a proud seafaring nation, and we will continue to support that as best we can. But I was very proud, certainly, and I know my colleagues in ICS, our global network of ship owners and operators in ICS, we're all very proud when the establishment of the International Advisory Committee on Global Maritime Affairs was passed in January last year. I think there was a mention earlier about the advancements that we've made when we look at EU recognition of seafarer certification. That wasn't something that just happened at the click of a finger. We all rolled up our sleeves and we worked together hand in glove, government, industry, unions, all of us together to make that happen. So we're very much hoping our appeal to President Marcos would be in that same spirit that united us and that brought us together to ensure that the ISC GMA would deliver on those expectations, so that those certificates of Filipino seafarers would continue to be recognized in the EU. Let's use that same spirit to make sure that the final version of the Magna Carta includes all the provisions that give all the stakeholders the comfort that they need to move forward and tackling together these vitally important issues, including cadetship berths. Thank you.
Thanks, Helio. I think he just said what basically we are both representing the similar stakeholders. So he just said what we probably would commonly say. ISCGMA is a very important inclusion into the maritime world that should influence the policy setting within the government. With the framework that was created, and we know there is a subcommittee in the ISCGMA talks about training. There is a recruitment. There is obviously other issues. But if you talk of training just now with regard to how the international organizations can help, that is the forum. Because within the ISCGMA, we have everyone inside. And the people in that ISCGMA can influence other bodies that actually can bring people expertise in and set up discussion motion that can be together with Marina, Chad, and everyone else, and PAMI, whoever stakeholder in improvement. I think somehow, and I may be completely wrong, somehow with the passage of the Magna Carta nearing an end, we feel that our importance have probably somehow been diluted, and this somehow is not going to have a positive effect in the long run unless something is being done, and something can only be done if there is a conversation with regard to what really can be done before we proceed. So I fear that if the ISCGMA does not revert back to the importance body that it was designed to be, it is going to be a difficult path to cross for all of us. And once again, I think I have to repeat what my colleague Helio was saying. The importance of Filipino seafarers cannot be ignored. So in the long run, maybe the employers will find a way, as we are doing today. If you see the minimum training that is done in the Philippines, companies are supplementing that with hundreds of millions of dollars being spent to retrain them on higher standards, which should have been the minimum standard in the long run. So we will probably find a way to employ them. But if ISCGMA and the concern of the international community is not somehow taken on board, and with all due respect to Congressman Salo, I know how passionate he's about the welfare of the seafarer, because I have met him personally, but I understand the complexities of a country where everything needs to be on board. But one of the things that we always say, the largest employers of the Filipino seafarer are overseas employers. So somehow that need to be taken into consideration if we really proceed. So we are here. We are open to assist in training, advanced training, invest money for the training, because future training is all about how much money we can really invest. So we are all here, but we just hope that our considerations will be taken into, our opinions will be taken into account with regard to the final passage of the Magna Carta.
When we hear the stance of the domestic shipping operators from the Philippine Coastwise Shipping Association, Administrator Edgardo Egay Nicolas, what's the PCSA's stand on Magna Carta of Filipino Seafarers?
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for inviting us in this timely event, as today is the Seafarers Day. With me earlier is our chairman of the Board of Trustees and the CEO of Light Shipping, Mr. Roger Lim, but he has to leave for personal matters. On the domestic side, let me start by quoting the DOTR Secretary Bautista when he made the bold remark that PCSA is the true and real representation of domestic shipping. Unquote. We in PCSA are happy with the final version of the bill, and we fully support our friend Congressman Salo having allowed us to be heard. We really went out of our way to ensure that domestic concerns are addressed and included in the final version. We firmly believe that we now have a more workable document to go on and make Filipino seafarers remain competitive and able to sustain their current standing in the global maritime industry. As mentioned earlier, many of the ocean-going Filipino seafarers trained in domestic ships before elevating to become international seamen. So let me say that the stronger domestic operations means strong foreign deployment in the future. Thank you very much.
It seems that our maritime institutions has the biggest contentions with regards to the provision in the Magna Carta of Filipino Seafarers concerning our education and training. But can the IRR, lastly, this is our question, can the implementing rules and regulations or IRR address all of these concerns and issues, including the maritime institutions' concerns? Congressman Salo, please.
Thank you, Ms. Lin. First, allow me to express my thanks also to the PCSA. Indeed, we had an opportunity to discuss with them, and the concerns that they've raised were really addressed. Thank you also to Captain Bilal, and of course to once again to the ICS Director and IMEC Chairman Bilal, that we hope that there will be a continuing discussion with them in ensuring that the concerns that they have really raised would continue to be addressed by the Philippine government. With respect to the concerns, again, raised by Mr. Sar Maklikmot, I'm really at a loss because I couldn't really fathom the fierce opposition. For one, nothing in the bill is new. With respect to the concerns that they've raised on the requirement for shipboard training, these are already under existing regulations. With respect to the requirement for training ship, this is already a requirement since 1953. But truth is, the Magna Carta actually made it easier for them, because it's not just a training ship that will be made as a requirement for compliance. It provides here also similar technologies, including simulators, and of course, appropriate arrangements with manning agencies or ship owners, both domestic and, of course, international ship owners. And PCAC is here. We convince them to provide certain support also to the maritime schools. So honestly, I couldn't understand from where that particular fierce opposition is coming from. Because the only thing new for the training education here is the involvement of Marina. From what used to be previously CHED, it is now under Marina. when it comes to the training and education of the seafarers, training and education of our cadets as well as the maritime students. So there's really nothing new in the bill except that it provides for a stricter implementation of existing rules. We mandate the marina administrator to really make sure that the requirements would really be implemented. And of course, as I mentioned a while ago, it actually provides a more leeway for maritime higher education institutions to be able to comply with the requirements of the law. So with that, at the same time, I note also the comments a while ago that there are really improvements with respect to the quality of training in as much as we have been removed from the or from the so-called concern of EMSA before. But honestly, the result, this particular result of being removed from the EMSA concern is not a, what do you call this one? It's not exactly a response coming from the maritime higher education institutions because they were one of the concerns being raised, one of the concerns that were identified by EMSA. And we note that it was really a whole of government approach, of course. In a sense, they have their participation in that particular regard, but it's so difficult to get a specific, what do you call this one, a credit for that particular removal from EMSA list. Nonetheless, we note that they have their concerns, and this particular concern would certainly be appropriately and adequately addressed by Marina, which will be the one to be mandated under this particular proposed Magna Carta to implement its provisions and make sure that we really create and develop more qualified and more competent Filipino seafarers. And for the last point, actually the data as of the moment speaks differently. We note that most of on the average, based on CHED data that was submitted to the House of Representatives, only 33% in total of all students who enroll in the maritime higher education institutions end up finishing or receiving their bachelor's degree. Why? Because they lack specific requirement with this shipboard training. But this particular shipboard training is already provided for. It's more general in a more general provision, wherein Marina will be the one to come up with appropriate guidelines how long this particular shipboard training would be required, either in the domestic maritime degrees or international maritime degrees. So we hope that Marina, I am very confident that Administrator Sonia Malaluan is really up to the par, and they will really make sure that are the objectives of both houses of Congress to create more qualified and more competent Filipino seafarers through training education would really be addressed through the Marina's leadership. Thank you very much, Ms. Lin.
Final remarks from our distinguished panelists. We'll start with from Marina Administrator Sonia Malaluan. Please.
Thank you, Lynn, and thank you, Congressman Salo, for that confidence in the Marina's leadership. And of course, we will take on the challenge and ensure that we continue to be recognized. And we are fully aware as well of all the challenges resulting from the emerging technologies and all the requirements of decarbonization. And we are, it is in our plans on how we will address this. And yes, the President himself gave us a directive that we should not only settle for the minimum requirements, but even aim for even above the minimum requirements to make our seafarers truly globally competitive. And again, I thank everyone and I request the support of the stakeholders. We should be one on this. We should not be debating and arguing, but rather joining hands on how we could truly implement, if should the law be signed, the bill should be signed into law, how we could effectively implement and achieve the objectives to which the bill has been drafted. So thank you to everyone.
BMW Director Augusto Santiago, please.
Thank you very much, Ma'am Lynn. First, on behalf of the department, we would like to extend our appreciation to our Congress, and we really go on with their wisdom. And in that, the Magna Carta of Filipino Seafarers, we really serve as a beacon of change, which shall redound to the benefit of our beloved Filipino seafarers. And with that, the DMW is one with Congress in praying for the immediate enactment of the revised version of the Magna Carta of Filipino Seafarers. So, Ma'am Lynn, that's our statement. And again, Happy International Seafarers Day to all our seafarers in the world.
Attorney Nolly Partido, Head of Legal Department of AMSUP.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Again, for and in behalf of Dr. Oka, our president and the general membership of AMUSUP, of course, we would like to thank Lynn for inviting us to this forum. And of course, like Director Ogie Santiago said, we would like to thank Congressman Ron Salo, and team from the members of this committee in this in the lower house, and of course their counterparts in the Senate. And we're really looking forward to the immediate passing of this bill into a law, so that everyone could work towards the I would say the attainment or the achievement of the objectives laid out in the bill. And thank you for our foreign employers for remaining steadfast in their trust and confidence in the Filipino seafarer. And we hope that this trust and confidence would continue with us, the Filipinos, giving our commitment to provide, I would say, truly globally competitive Filipino seafarers. Again, thank you so much, and mabuhay ang Pilipino mandaragat. Happy International Seafarers Day. Thank you, Ms. Lynn.
Army President Sir Manglitmot II, please.
Again, thank you, Ma'am Lynn, for the invite for today, and again, thank you to all your listeners. I just want to leave with a closing remark, and this is from a quote from the former CHED Commissioner Bautista. And I quote, "The essence of education is to be flexible and relevant to the needs of the industry. When regulations become provisions of a law, it prevents flexibility and relevance." With this, I hope that everyone has understood our opposition in the inclusion of education and training in the Magna Carta for Seafarers. Again, maraming salamat sa inyong lahat. Mabuhay ang Pilipino Magdaragat at Happy Seafarers Day to all.
JMG Chairman Erickson Marquez.
Yes, Lynn. Firstly, we thank Marino World for this wonderful opportunity to discuss common concerns on this important day of the seafarers. We, of course, support the earliest passage of the Magna Carta, while we still optimistic that certain provisions could once again find its way to the law, either as a separate one or as part of this present law that will be passed. But we really look forward to to be part of the discussions with Marina, especially with the new the to support Marina and DMW in its effort to improve the welfare of the Filipino seafarers. And we hope that sooner or later we will all be back as a real contender to be undisputable number one supplier of Filipino seafarers. So marami pong salamat sa inyong lahat for this opportunity.
IMEC Chairman Captain Bilal Ahmed, please.
Thanks, Lynn, for inviting me to have an opportunity to air our views. I think this has been a very productive. We see almost there is a contra views, but I think everyone here, there is a common theme that we wish to see the Magna Carta succeed and become a law soon as possible. Obviously, some of us within this meeting would like to see some additional things to be included, and whether that finds a way or not is another thing. But in general, the Magna Carta is something that's a positive thing for the Filipino seafarers. That I really have to say. In the end, hopefully, if all concerns are taken into account, it will be much better for the future. IMEC and ISCGMA are always standby to assist and help and advise whenever that is needed. And I don't think any of us will shy away from putting our head together if in case of any support or assistance is needed with regard to the Filipino seafarers. And in the end, obviously today is a great day for seafarers, and as we wish to put it on a happy note, our seafarers from the Philippines are always in our mind, and hopefully we'll all work together for the betterment of their life. Thank you.
ICS Director Helio Vicente.
Yeah, pretty hard to follow those comments by Bilal that were so poignant. But I think I'll take this opportunity to just renew the industry's commitment to seafarers worldwide, Filipino seafarers included. There really are unique Filipino seafarers are. So we as an industry remain fully committed to continuing to help shipping companies providing decent work for seafarers that they employ, including through the provision of guidance. At ICS, we do the guidelines on the application of the ILO MLC. We also work very closely at international level with IMEC and with ITF to make sure really that the interests of seafarers and all those aspects that govern their employment continue to take. But I think I would like to end my remarks just by once again taking a moment to reflect on those seafarers that are still being held captive, that are still, unfortunately, as we speak, still facing some plights at sea. They are not forgotten. We remember all of them, and let's bring them home. Thank you.
And for his final wrap-up, Congressman Ron Salo, our primary guest.
Once again, thank you very much, Ms. Lynn, for inviting me to be one of your source persons in this particular webinar. I really thank also all my co-panelists in this particular webinar. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. We know that we may differ in certain instances, but everyone, I suppose, is in agreement for the immediate passage of the Magna Carta of Filipino Seafarers as we charter the future of our Filipino seafarers. We note that, of course, our aim has always been to create more competent, as I mentioned a while ago, more qualified and world-class Filipino seafarers. And also, as mentioned a while ago, this particular Magna Carta Filipino Seafarers is long overdue. And we hope that at this time, it will really meet the approval of our president. At the same time, we wish to see continuing discussions with all our stakeholders because we note that this particular proposed measure is not perfect, as we note the concerns and comments of our co-panelists, as well as all those who are listening or watching this particular Zoom webinar. But nonetheless, we note that everyone here, I myself, is open and will continue to dialogue with them, and will make sure that any additional comments or proposals would always be welcome, and we will always endeavor to do our best to make sure that such particular proposals would also be considered by both houses of Congress. Thank you very much, Ma'am Lynn, and thank you very much for all the participants, as well as those who attended and are watching this particular webinar. Once again, happy Seafarers Day.
Thank you very much, Congressman Ron Salo, and to our distinguished panelists. In closing, we ask, which path will the Philippines take? When will a genuine Magna Carta of Filipino Seafarers be finally realized? Inaction and posturing would inevitably lead to damage to the country's leading position in the global crewing industry. Thank you for joining us. Happy Seafarers Day!
Mabuhay tayo lahat.
Thank you so much, Ma'am Lynn.
Sir,
Hope to see you again.
Thank you all. Happy Day of the Seafarers!
Hey, are you looking for a new escapade on board? Come and join our company, because here, we see and we got you. In Elberg, we bring together our experience, our commitment to quality and continual quest for improvement with the readiness to cope with the diversified demands and needs of our clients in accordance with regulatory requirements to deliver the best possible service. We value our seafarers as key workers and, as a company, we are committed to ensuring that the values we build are responsibly protected to provide satisfaction and to build lasting relationships with our clients. We are committed to integrity. We are proactive. We are innovative. We work with excellence. We value teamwork. We work with the utmost professionalism. In Elberg, we care about your welfare. We offer programs such as the Crew Welfare Program, Career Development Plan for Officers, Electrician Cadets, Fitter Cadets, and a Cadetship Program. What are you waiting for? Join now!